friends. My name is Daniel So, and I serve as the director of Cyclical San Diego. Cyclical San Diego is a local grassroots network committed to building and sustaining a movement of starting new churches. Cyclical San Diego was launched at the end of 2017 as a missional initiative of the Presbytery of San Diego. We support an ecumenical group of women and men who reflect the diversity of our beautiful city by investing in them as leaders through personal relationships, monthly cohort gatherings, and coaching. We convene 2 monthly cohort gatherings. Our discerners gather around the questions: is God calling me to start a new church? And how am I growing in that discernment process? And our starters gather monthly for relevant teaching, peer consulting, and kinship. Cyclical San Diego also works alongside established churches to help them engage this vital kingdom work of starting new churches. As we continue to navigate the challenges of pandemic by meeting online, we're excited to be able to share with you a new monthly feature: short video interviews featuring starters, discerners, and others from our network. We invite you to hear their stories and support them in prayer. For our first interview, I'm glad to introduce you to David Tran, a dynamic leader in San Diego who began with our discerners cohort and is now shifting over to our starters cohort as he launches his new church this month, Table San Diego.
I was born and raised in Orange County, California, to Vietnamese refugee parents, and then came down here to San Diego for college, and then spent time, I would say I was spiritually born and raised in kind of the Catholic tradition, but then really matured through my time in university and through the Vineyard churches. And, during my time here, I, did a lot of ministry on campus at UC San Diego. And then upon graduation, just felt the Lord inviting me to go into the workplace and really see his kingdom kind of break through in my relationships there. Ended up going to business school. And then from here, I have a full-time job, and I live with my wife and my 2 dogs. And, I'm also an Enneagram type 1, wing 2. I thrive off of risk and adventure. I love diving into, multi-ethnic, cross-cultural relationships with refugees or our Black and Brown communities here. Just having meals with folks.
You wear a lot of different hats, and you're involved in a lot of great work. I know that as I've gotten to know you, I love hearing your story about all the sort of holistic ways ministry expresses itself in and through your life. So I'd love it if you could say a little bit more about some of that work and ministry that's gone into your life here in San Diego.
About 8 to 10 years ago, I got involved through a member of my church at that time with an organization called Bridge of Hope, and they were operating in City Heights. During my time there, that's where I met my wife and how we met. I got a chance to really build deep relationships with a lot of refugee families in City Heights. And what we learned was that as we were doing all these, all this kind of, spiritual community development, that we could not have community development divorced from also economic development. So about 7 years ago, we had this dream of, starting a nonprofit, coffee shop that gave jobs to refugees, to just involve youth, and to foster youth. And we were able to launch a shop, and part of my master's thesis for business school was the business plan and market research plan for this coffee shop. We launched it. It was successful. We were featured in NPR for, at least a couple of times a year for a few years. And after a lot of prayer and recognizing that it was so much work for us, especially for my wife, who was leading it as the executive director, it was called CDAT's Coffee House then. We transitioned to a different model where we actually gave the keys to our coffee shop to another organization, an immigrant couple based in Tijuana, who took it over, and we still run the nonprofit through the shop. But during that time there, during our time now, and then through the shop, we are able to provide a lot of job training and career assistance to youth ages 16 to 24 who face barriers to employment.
So I'd love to just have you share a little bit more about what is Table San Diego, how it came about, when you're launching, a little bit about your values, whatever you'd like to share, it would be great.
Yeah, so from a young age, I knew that I was gifted with gathering community and connecting with all types of people. The more eccentric folks, that might feel like they're on the margins and don't relate to the common crowd. I always felt like I related well with people of all races and ethnicities because I was so curious in learning about them, and really and sharing life with them and doing life with them. And I would say the call to formally plant some kind of church came when I was 22 years old. I'm 34 years old now, and I would say over the past 12 years, there have been so many detours that ended up being, a spirit-led kind of lamp unto my feet path that God would take me on to teach me new things, to help me dismantle old ways of thinking that were harmful to those around me, that were harmful to people that are not part of the church, or have been hurt by the church. And even, the recent, developments of over the past, 7, 8 years of Black Lives Matter, as not just a statement, but a truth, has met so many challenges, both socially and politically, here in our nation, and just asking the question, how can we as a church respond and also submit to other voices that have been leading the way, that have been crying out. And so Table San Diego, is for me a convergence of so many relationships and so many stories. So Table San Diego, is our tagline is that we're a multi-ethnic community, embodying who Jesus is, the person of Jesus. And for me, the multi-ethnic piece is so key because our ethnicity, our nationality, who we are, our cultural DNA is so unique and spans across so many, different communities and here in San Diego. And to be able to create a space for that, for someone who might identify as LGBT, to someone who might identify, as, biracial, I might say, I'm half Jamaican and I'm half, Anglo, German and maybe Black Irish, there's so many unique aspects of what shapes us and forms us that in order to understand and see the image of God in the person who's sitting across the table from us, we have to sit down and we have to listen and ask questions. And asking the question, Jesus, what is your presence doing here? And what have you already been doing? And I always think that one sign, especially in a multi-ethnic kind of ministry or community, one sign that we are doing things well is not when people come to our house to have a meal, but it's when other people invite us to their homes. And that kind of model of Luke 10 where people feel safe enough to let someone like me or my wife or my friends or our leaders into their homes, to have a meal with them, to see their space, to celebrate who they are. So I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited to see how that plays out here in Southeast San Diego.
I want to ask, how has Cyclical San Diego been helpful for you in discerning your call to start this new church, and also now that you're sort of in that transition phase to actually starting it?
Yeah, I think there are, kind of three things I like to kind of point to. The first is Sickle provided me a community that is very intentional with my leadership growth and my strategic thinking in a time where I felt like I didn't have that. Being in relationship with, Daniel and Jaya, and also in relationship with a couple of the other cohort members who are very intentional with just caring for me as a person and also recognizing who I am as a leader. And then us, walking in parallel side by side with each other. I think that's been really redemptive and restorative for me to know that, oh my gosh, there are, leaders who happen to also be Asian American, who are critically thinking about church planting, to be able to really be proactive and check in with me. I can't tell you how many times, over the past months where I just get a text message saying, "Hey, just thinking about you, praying about you, how are you doing?" And that just means a lot to me, as someone that does pour out a lot, as someone that, you know, um, is looking, to be held accountable, to be loved and be seen, just as I want others that I'm trying to serve to be loved and seen, by me and by God. So that's been really special for me, the intentionality of the relationships. The second piece that I kind of alluded to earlier is just the unique space for, in my experience, so far, POC church planners and pastors to connect. I think it's so unique to be able to have that space and to really recognize and to really see church as not ethnic agnostic or cultural agnostic, right? Church planning, there's no way that it can be agnostic, and I think it's a lie for any ministry, any missional ministry to kind of strip our theology and our approach from being culturally relevant. And so otherwise it's just the white imagination, I think. So just having that unique space to connect with POC leaders have been great. And then just the third piece is really around accountability. I, as someone that has been part of SA, Sexaholics Anonymous, for a long time, I recognize that what matters more than your external life is your internal life, because your internal life informs and shapes, all the great things that, God is calling all of us to. And my internal life matters. And so having accountability, having friends that can really speak into my deepest fears, that can speak into my weaknesses, my blind spots, is so critical. I hate it, no, I don't think anyone enjoys it, but I hate it, but I think it's really valuable. I think it's really valuable to be challenged, and to be really seen, in ways where I want that door closed, but it's healthy to have that door open. So I can be formed by God and by spirit and by my community.
As we wrap up, I'd love to invite those who are watching this to be a part of your story, to be a part of supporting and encouraging you. So I want to ask, how can we pray for you and pray for Table San Diego?
I would say there are a few prayer points. The first is pray for the people that are interested. We have over 40 folks that sign up our mailing list already, and a lot of those folks I don't know. And I, what that tells me is that there's just a longing to see our churches in San Diego respond and continue to respond to injustice in this world, and even at a local level, not just for our Black and Brown brothers and sisters, but also for our Indigenous friends, right? And so, and how can church be a place that honors those that go before us, honors those that have been traumatized and oppressed? And there's such a longing for that. And I just echo, George Floyd's daughter's words that, I quote her, "My daddy has changed the world," and I think about Trayvon Martin, I think about all these other names, and I think about so many people on my list, on the list so far, and people who we're meeting with right now in our front yard, social distance, hanging out with, they're interested and they want to learn more. I'd love for you to pray for them. I just feel like there's such a deep longing there to change the world, continue changing the world. So there's that to pray. And then the second thing is pray for our team and for our board. I officially put in the paperwork to incorporate our organization, here in the state of California, and then we're going to apply for nonprofit status once we get our tax ID. So just a lot of logistics there. Behind all that is really having a team and a board that is going to add a healthy leadership structure, and I believe that structure submits to spirit. So wherever that Lord leads there, I think that's great. And I think the third thing, Deanna, you beat me to the word there. I do think there's a reformation that's happening that is at the same scale as Luther, back in the 17th century. I think there's, I think there is a a big reformation when it comes to Black lives and POC theology that is going to look a lot different than theology that has been handed down to us, that we've inherited, over the past few centuries. And I think to create healthy space for that and to honor that is really important. So I'm really excited for that, and in terms of what this reformation looks like at a local level here in Southeast San Diego.
David, we're so excited for you, and especially from Cyclical San Diego. We look forward to continuing this journey with you, to come alongside, to support and encourage, and to see all the ways that God leads you and Table San Diego.